The night the sheriff's deputy showed up at our Emergency Homeowners Association meeting, I watched our HOA president's smile die in real time. She'd spent weeks trying to bury me under fines, threats, and paperwork, and all I had to do was slide one folder across the table. The crazy part is, none of this started over property lines or politics. It started because my house had power when everyone else didn't. It was one of those brutal summer blackouts where the air feels thick, like you're breathing through a wet towel. The whole neighborhood went dead quiet, except my place where the AC kept running and the lights stayed on. I wasn't throwing a party, I was just trying to keep my family from sweating through the night. Around 11 p.m., someone started pounding on my front door like they were serving a warrant. Not a polite knock. That rhythmic, angry thud that says, "I'm not leaving until you surrender." I opened it, and there she was, Patricia Hartman, our HOA president, sweaty, furious, clutching her clipboard like it was a weapon. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask if we were okay. She just pointed past me into my house and snapped, "Turn it off." Now. I blinked at her, half convinced I was dreaming. "Turn what off?" "That machine," she said, like she was talking to a child. "It's past 10. You're violating Section 4B. No noise after 10 p.m. It's a nuisance." I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly her. The whole grid was down. People were melting in their bedrooms. And Patricia was standing on my porch reciting bylaws like she was announcing the 10 Commandments. "It's an inverter generator," I told her. "It's quieter than half the AC units on this street. If I shut it down, my house hits 90 degrees in an hour. I'm not doing that." Her face tightened. "Then I'll issue a citation." And she said it with that calm little satisfaction like she'd been waiting for the chance. The next morning it was a violation notice stuck to my front door in big bold letters. Excessive noise. A $250 fine. I stood there in my driveway holding that paper, staring at the number like it had to be a typo. That afternoon she came back, same clipboard, same tight smile. "Second warning," she said. "The fine is mandatory and it will increase if you don't comply. The board has discussed this." I remember looking past her shoulder because she kept glancing around like she wanted an audience and seeing my neighbors peeking through blinds. Nobody came out. Nobody said a word. They just watched like this was normal. I tried to stay civil. I really did. "Patricia, I'm not sure how turning off my generator fixes the fact that the entire neighborhood is out of power." She didn't even flinch. "I don't care about the grid. I care about the bylaws." That's when I realized what this was really about. It wasn't noise. It wasn't community peace. It was control. And she hated that she didn't have it over me for one night. So I did what any sane person would do when they're dealing with an HOA Karen with a clipboard addiction. I tried to remove the excuse. I built a noise mitigation box, made everything even quieter, cleaned it up so it didn't look like a junkyard science project. If she wanted peace and quiet, fine. I gave her peace and quiet. She showed up, looked at it for 2 seconds and said, "Doesn't matter." I thought she was kidding. She was not kidding. "There's no application submitted for approval," she said. "Even if it's removable, it's still a violation. Take it down or the fines will keep escalating." A day later, a certified letter arrived. My stomach dropped the second I saw the envelope. Another violation notice, $500 this time, plus an order to remove the unapproved structure on my property. At 3 p.m. sharp, she came back again, but now she brought backup. Todd Reynolds, the HOA treasurer. Smug grin clipboard, that vibe like he'd rehearsed his lines in the mirror. They walked straight to my yard like it already belonged to them. Patricia tapped the paper and said, "This violates Section 9C, Aesthetic Concerns." Todd looked at my setup like it was a dead animal. "You can't just build whatever you want. This eyesore doesn't belong here." That word eyesore hit different. Because I wasn't building a billboard. I wasn't installing a neon sign. I was keeping my house functional during a blackout, and they were talking to me like I'd committed a crime against landscaping. I stood there with my arms crossed, trying not to explode. "It's a generator box. It's removable." Patricia gave me that tight little smile. "Exactly. Remove it." I went inside and just sat down. No dramatic sobbing, no movie moment. Just me staring at a fine I didn't deserve, realizing I was up against people who could keep writing numbers on paper until I ran out of money. And I'll be honest, for the first time I thought about giving in. Not because I believed she was right, but because fighting an HOA feels like arguing with a vending machine. You can pound on it all day, and it still doesn't care. That's when my protest idea hit me, and yeah, it was petty. But it was also practical. If Patricia wanted to treat electricity like a privilege she could regulate, I'd make sure I didn't need her permission for it. So I started moving toward a small residential wind turbine, clean, legal, quiet enough, the kind that doesn't scream mad scientist, just guy who likes being prepared. Of course, the moment she heard the word turbine, it was like I'd threatened to build a missile silo. She started emailing about visual pollution. She started circling rules about structures and community harmony. She even hinted that the HOA could take action if I didn't stop. And every message had that same smug tone, like she was daring me to blink first. Then the twist happened, and it wasn't loud. It was quiet, sneaky, and way worse than a fine. I pulled property records mostly out of spite. I wanted to know what she could actually do. And buried in the documents was a community property map that looked off, just a few feet. A tiny shift in the boundary line. But that tiny shift moved my equipment from on my property to barely over the line. I stared at the screen, zoomed in, zoomed out, checked the date, checked another copy. My chest went cold. That line didn't match the survey I got when I bought the house. So I took pictures, screenshotted everything, and sent it to a lawyer, Mark Jensen, the kind of guy who doesn't waste words. He called me back within minutes. Ethan, he said, if that boundary line is wrong, this isn't just an HOA dispute, that's potential fraud. Fraud. That word turned my $250 headache into something else entirely. I spent the rest of that day digging. County records, old surveys, anything I could find. And the deeper I went, the uglier it got. It wasn't just my lot. Other lines looked shifted too little by little, like someone had been nudging the map over time to claim slivers of land without anyone noticing. That night I saw Patricia walking her dog like everything was normal, like she hadn't been trying to bleed me dry all week. I walked right up and kept my voice flat. I saw the map, I said. The boundary doesn't match the original survey. You've been moving lines. Her face went pale for half a second, then she recovered fast. You're bluffing, she muttered, but her eyes didn't match her words. I didn't argue. I just watched her walk away, and in that moment I knew she was scared. The next morning, I went to the county clerk's office and sat down with a surveyor. No drama, just paperwork and reality. I laid out the map's original versus the version floating around our HOA files. He frowned, traced the lines with his pen, then looked up at me. These don't match what's on record, he said. Either someone made a mistake, or someone did this on purpose. On the way home, my phone buzzed with an email notification. Another one from the Homeowners Association. This wasn't a fine. It was a lawsuit. They were demanding removal of my equipment penalties for property violations and damages. $15,000, $15,000, like they were trying to punch a hole straight through my savings account. I stared at that number so long my eyes went blurry. And for a few minutes I did the math in my head, not because I thought I'd lose in court, but because I knew what it costs to fight. Time stress fees the way it eats your sleep. That was my lowest point. Not sadness, just exhaustion. The kind where you think is peace worth paying for even when you know you shouldn't have to. Then Mark called again, and his voice was different, sharper. We confirmed it, he said. We've got a whistleblower. Someone on the board sent the original unaltered survey maps. And they sent emails. Timeline approvals, everything. I didn't feel heroic. I felt angry because now it was official. Patricia wasn't just strict, she wasn't just annoying. She was using the HOA like a weapon, and the paperwork wasn't sloppy. It was engineered. So I went public. I wrote one email to the entire neighborhood, calm, detailed, no ranting. I included the maps, the screenshots, the lawsuit amount, and exactly how the lines had been shifted. I didn't beg people to support me. I just told them what was happening. By that evening, my phone wouldn't stop. Texts, calls, emails. Neighbors who'd avoided eye contact for years suddenly had stories. People who'd paid fines in silence were furious. And the HOA board panicked so hard they called an emergency meeting. When I walked into that room, it felt like a courtroom without the judge. Folding chairs, fluorescent lights, everyone tense. Patricia sat at the front with that smug look, clutching her clipboard like it could save her. And then the sheriff's deputy walked in and stood by the door. The air changed instantly. I didn't wait for Patricia to launch into her speech. I set my folder on the table, thick, heavy, the kind that makes a sound when it hits wood. I opened it and started passing out copies. "Here's the original survey," I said, tapping the page. "Here's the version the HOA used. Same document, different lines." Board members leaned in. People started murmuring. Someone whispered, "No way." Someone else said, "That's my lot too." Patricia's face drained. She tried to stand, tried to speak, but her voice came out thin. This isn't what it seems." I looked at her and kept it simple. "It's exactly what it seems." The deputy stepped forward, held up paperwork, and the room went dead silent. He said they'd be investigating the altered documents and the abuse of authority. He said fraud. He said warrant. Patricia's grip on that clipboard finally slipped. Her mouth opened like she had a speech prepared. And nothing came out. And right there, with everyone watching, with the paper trail on the table, with the Homeowners Association mask ripped off in one brutal moment, her power collapsed. Lesson learned. If someone hides behind rules to control people, the fastest way to beat them is to shine a light on the paperwork.